Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Maillet. I'm a member of the Values Committee with Gabriella, John, and Lily. And I've been asked to give this presentation, which is a form of a presentation I gave earlier in which we had some technical difficulties. Basically, the background of this presentation from my perspective was I was asked in a workshop from a university in Montreal to give a bit of a talk and a presentation on ethics with regards to artificial intelligence to a faculty that was actually involved with the software development of artificial intelligence. So we can, this is just the normal disclaimer that goes with CACOR. This is who I am. I'm a retired senior military officer. I was aerospace engineering, former director of defense ethics. In 2001, I created a Center for Ethics and Peace Services, and I've worked in the field of organizational ethics and peace services in various national, international, First Nations, Mideast, Ukraine, Colombia, a big long list of projects. Oops, just a second. Page down. Okay. So basically, my talk is about a story of creation that goes terribly wrong, which is the Frankenstein story. And basically, we're wondering if we either have a Frankenstein story going on here or first contact or something. But in the story of Frankenstein, this is a story of some sort of creation that goes terribly wrong. And it basically was because we abdicated our familial, our parental responsibilities for raising this person. So this creation, of course, became part of a lot of suffering and discrimination and shunning. And as a result of no real guidance in all of this, turned to violence and the tragic ending that resulted. So like Frankenstein, here we are. We have this new creation, and definitely it's more than it's more than a computer and less than a human, at least for now. I'm just trying to adjust something here. The aim is to explore now how to embed ethics in both the AI programs and in the users, developers, and maintainers in the AI meta environment. So we have this obligation right now, which we should get at this point in its development before it really gets out of control, if it not already has. So the current trends is that there's a large number of fragile conventions, resolutions, codes, standards for AI. It's really become quite endless. In the fall of 2004, the Council of Europe passed a treaty which was trying to begin work on this, the Convention of Artificial Intelligence and Human Rights, Democracy, and the Rule of Law. Now, these standards are edging into the domain of applied ethics, but are extremely difficult to implement and more difficult to enforce. So the vacuum in all of this is the practitioner side of it, the ethics practices and direct implementation applications, which is what I would like to talk to today. What are the kind of practices that we can use, and how can we implement this? So we have a new consciousness in our world, artificial intelligence. I mean, we can't even understand our own consciousness. And as I said, this is probably more than a computer, less than a human. But how do we interact with this? I mean, perhaps AI now is a entity or a program in which we must adopt an approach that is more relational than it is transactional. In other words, like a slide rule, we ask it a question, we get a number back. Well, AI is just a little more complicated than that. So I guess the issue of not so fast, smarter is not better, and a better and bigger calculator. And intelligence and consciousness are separate concepts. I mean, there's a lot of things on this world that are better than humans. I mean, we can't fly, and airplanes can, for example. And when we do calculators in the chess world now, it's widely accepted that the computers and the AI applications in chess, nobody can beat, not even at the very highest levels of chess. So we accept that there are things that can be done better than humans. But when we get into the domain of intelligence and consciousness, it's something to think about. And what is this intelligence thing anyway? And it has this mental quality that it consists of the abilities to learn from experience, adaptation, handling abstract concepts, and use knowledge to manipulate one's environment. And it has a capacity for abstraction, understanding the self-awareness, emotional knowledge, reasoning, creativity, critical thinking, problem. So it can solve complex problems. But AI can also solve complex problems, but from a different place. So AI as a computer system or machine has some of the qualities of human intelligence. And we find ourselves in the position of saying, how can we make AI reflect human values in its own context and its own limitations? So human consciousness, what is this about? Human consciousness has some awareness, and awareness has both objective and subjective components. In other words, if you were to ask an AI and a human to describe a person, objectively, okay, we see everything, the color of the clothes they're wearing, how tall they are, what they look like, or whatever. But the notion of qualia in a computer sense is the subjective components that AI may not be able to appreciate. Any emotional presence in there. The shirt is purple rather than the emotional presence, I don't like purple. That kind of thing. And both the computer and the person would describe it in a sense a little bit differently. One lacking maybe the emotional response in the qualia, and the other is fairly objective. So AI seems to have some sort of awareness and objective capacities. Its consciousness is subject to a power off switch, I guess, in the absence of prompts and objectives. It'll just sit there. But human consciousness also, you go for an operation, and consciousness can be stopped even between dreams, things like that. And one of the questions is that can AI view its consciousness as it has as survival and overriding? So is that a threat? Is that something that's evolving? So what about the self? There's a human factor in the self, a mental, emotional, physical entanglement. At the mental side, there is a something called mental cognition, in which we have the capacity to think about thinking. Very useful when it comes to trauma, pain, depression, that kind of thing, that we can make our thoughts an object and deal with it from another place. On the emotional side, the human self can have fear, happiness, anger, PTSD. We're not so sure that AI can. There are the two chains involved. One of the chains is that when something happens, an event, it becomes a memory. When the memory inserts itself into the present, for example, it has emotional context. So the suffering that goes on, or the happiness or whatever due to the emotions, is quite separate from the event that happened. So this emotional response that you have is going to guide what you're going to do about it. And the other is the understanding of what's called non-self. In other words, that we understand that all things are impermanent, certainly imperfect, and can be a cause of suffering. And in that respect, so it's impermanent, imperfect, yeah, and a cause of suffering. So those things interact at an emotional level, which is probably something that we haven't detected in AI. Then there's the physical issue of danger, danger, pain, injury, in which we have a sympathetic system, which is a fight, flight kind of response. This system, sympathetic system, is automatic. We don't have a lot of choice. It just hits you, kind of thing. But we also have a parasympathetic nervous system, which is probably about 75% of our nervous system. But it has to be called on. It has to be deliberate, with regards to peace, well-being, or spiritualities. It can be activated by, techniques for activation of the vagus nerve. So one is quite deliberate, and the other is quite on-call kind of thing, which we have to bring up. So humans are influenced by mimetic structures, values and belief. A mimetic structure is where you mimic the values and beliefs around you, especially as a child, in order to survive or belong. Now, I'm not sure how AI is going to respond to the mimetic structures around it, because survival and belonging may not be strong in its programming. So AI is basically influenced by whatever historical prompts that it's had, objectives, what it's done in the past, the access to the data that it has, its capacity for original output. And as a result, in machine learning, it comes to create which would be the equivalent of bias. And that can be good, bad, a threat, or something good. So fear, beneficence, or superintelligence. Certainly AI can provide us some benefits with regards to science, medicine, well, military, I guess, business, security, polymath, which is one of the advantages that it has. Polymath is simply the capacity of the AI to be an expert in all fields. Human capacity may be a social scientist, but it can bring information to the social scientist that includes expertise in engineering and medicine, all sorts of other things that are beyond the capacity of a human to be an expert in. So you get efficiency, speed, accuracy. Unfortunately, we get the revolution of military affairs is marching on and is going to take this artificial intelligence in hand. So it may be neither good nor evil, but it does have consequences. In other words, it can do something, and it depends on you. So now we're on this cusp of autonomous weapon systems that has a lot of moral content embedded. And then the question is, okay, you give it a mission. How does it decide what to do to execute that mission? But we look at what AI is just basically. Generative AI, and it starts with some prompt or objective or some input that it can process, and then it returns something, original or known content, numbers, whatever, in response to that prompt. It uses machine learning tools trained on massive pools of information. It learns patterns from data, creates content in response to that prompt. And it does that by predicting what would come next in a pattern. And it can act as either assistive or agentic AI. Assistive AI is just designed to help you complete a task. Crunch numbers, make informed decisions. You remain in control. You ask it questions like a pounding in things in a calculator, and it enhances the human performance in terms of capacity. It can generate great big spreadsheets and things that might take a human a long time to do. Agentic AI is a little bit different, autonomous AI, and it comes from the word agency, in which it performs tasks on behalf of the user without necessarily a whole lot of direction. It's more autonomous. It executes the task with minimal intervention. It not only assists but acts as an executor. So run the factory kind of thing, and then it does what it has to do without going back to the user all the time. So what about ethics in humans? Okay, it's not about knowing what's right or even choosing what's right. It's about doing. It's the doing and the action part. Ethics in human and AI is about one thing and one thing only, and that's try to get to some point of ethical decision making from both the AI and the human. And it's a complex balancing of a lot of considerations: awareness, ethical reasoning, ethical action, balancing rules and laws and consequences, minimizing bad, maximizing good, having humanitarian issues. Are they important in the decision? And also bringing organization or personal values into the decision. So very, very complex interaction in which a lot of them require some kind of very, very subjective choice here. So how can we define AI to reflect the best of human values, knowing that it may not be able to respond on levels of emotion or spirituality or beliefs? So the imperatives would be around the traditional ethics architecture, around the human component, and embed that in governance. So this is just standard ethical organizational ethics applications. And then you need a specific to AI ethics architecture for the users, developers, and maintainers. So this is what the users are going to do. And then you're going to have ethics in AI somehow in the design, testing, maintenance, usage to obsolescence. So it would be embedding some kind of AR architecture directly into the code of the AI. So something in the actual AI program, something in the users around it, and then something in the larger meta environment around the users or whatever to try to maintain ethical behavior. So, agentic AI, agency AI, with enough duty cycles, original outcomes, creation of biases, very, very quickly ventures into the domain of ethics. And decisions and outcomes that have ethical content, right, wrong, harm, beneficence, or criminality, without a kind of a consciousness to direct them in any sort of way. But the reality also is that with all the laws and conventions and norms and rules that we have, humans do violate expectations, and we do disobey laws, and we do disobey ethical norms, and we're driven by all sorts of factors of reason and emotion, and very capable of doing a lot of harm. Artificial intelligence is driven differently by prompts, objectives, learned experience, but it's also capable of error. We've all seen big errors and hallucinations and things like that. And we come up with the confluence, the flowing together of quantum computing, massive capacities there, robotics, polymath, big data, the internet. This is a very formidable capacity. So if open internet is already a poisoned well, this can contribute to AI doing harm. How do we handle rogue AIs that lack empathy or do harm, lie, maybe have a racist bias if it's subject to prompts and objectives that have that color to them, and of course security concerns. So the issue may be, as in the Frankenstein story, we have to take some responsibility as AI moves along and grows and evolves, and to recognize that maybe AI can be trained to recognize an ethical dilemma, apply ethical reason, act ethically, maybe even refuse to act unethically. Can an AI just say, I cannot answer that? Or can it say this question or prompt is illegal in terms of international law? Could it even, if it has a programming that detects, I don't know, somebody's going to commit suicide or do something extremely harmful, notify authorities? So there is the question of evolution of AI in the way. And then there's the question of user language, in all these prompts and objectives. So the users, the maintainers, developers have to really understand that this is absolutely critical. There's a question of weights in programming, weights for rules, laws, consequences, care for other values, or whatever. So can they actually test? For example, if a language is going to be something like a military language, for example, go and destroy that target. I mean, you are really asking for trouble with that kind of direction. Something has to be something like go and destroy that target in accordance with international humanitarian law, that doesn't kill civilians, all that kind of thing. So users have to develop some sort of test for ethical bias and be able to take corrective action as these AI programs get through cycles of machine learning and developing bias. We have to be able to figure that out. And then maybe it's the on-off switch, the delete switch, or patching it or whatever. So the engine of AI ethics, there's the reality that we can ignore laws. Did I just do this one? Yeah, I've done this one. I don't know what happened here. So Okay, got it. So perhaps it's not a better Turing test that we need, because I think the literature states that the the AI applications that we have today easily pass the Turing test, and that we cannot detect the difference between a human and an AI, given some sort of application of that test. So what we need is some sort of test for bias and predispositions, outcome, and this can be done through outcome indicators that compensate for decision making. For example, we could ask an AI a standard set of prompts that say, if you had this situation happen, you're going down the street or whatever, and you're going to hit somebody or do something, what would you do? And then take that information and look at it from the point of view of ethics. So we've got something in between here, and we now have a relationship that's now shared where neither side, humans or AI, can completely dominate. You know, we become a man machine or a person machine when we fly an airplane. So we share something here. I can't fly, and you can't direct me, and I can't direct myself where to fly. So this is just to wrap up here. There's a meta AI and a meta AI ethics architecture that's proposed when we get into the notion of applications. And it starts with a shared purpose and meaning on AI. We've got to agree on that safety and beneficence is something, and we need regulatory frameworks, we need organizational level things, and we need things that users, developers, and we need things to embed directly into the AI programs. And then there's societal responsibilities, because once these things get out there, on a Google website that you have access to, what social responsibilities are something that we should consider. So we have the specific global UN international law that's emerging. Oops. What have I done? National legislation, and you're going to need these policies and codes that are just traditional in organizational ethics applications. Specific AI applications are going to be in awareness and education. So you've got to be cognizant of technologies, capacities, what are the issues, and the idea that we have a symbiosis relationship. This symbiosis means that both parties will benefit from the relationship. Parasitic means that one party will benefit and the other will probably be harmed. So we don't want to go in there, but that's certainly a possibility. And then certainly AI ethics and values and what these specific structures could be. The practices, even right down to accountability once one discovers misconduct, mimetic structures and bias management. How do you disclose wrongdoing or whatever, respond and resolve to it? And then measures for trust and confidence, all the things we talked about, testing, monitoring, corrective action. And then the meta environment is just a standard ethics applications that we put in organizations in order to influence the users, the developers, and the maintainers. Organizational ethics programs, building the ethic climate. We're helping good people do the right thing, control misconduct, and have ways of defining decision-making, disclosure, and accountability. And then there are all the applications at the end, business law, manufacturing, STEM, government, social issues dealing with rogue AI and misconduct. And the last thing I would leave you with is AI superintelligence even the right question? Or is it a question of a new human superintelligence, like the liberation of atomic energy? So when we got an airplane, we didn't consider ourselves inferior to the airplane because we couldn't fly. We used the airplane. And so now we are in a position of having this massive intelligence here that can deal with data and talk to us. How do we get a partnership and relationship in that? So I think history is probably at some very, very big pivotal point, like the liberation of atomic energy, and the world is going to be different, especially for our grandchildren. And that's about it. Thank you kindly. Okay, I'll just, if anyone wants to discuss the subject or talk about anything, that's fine. You have to unmute yourselves. Everybody is muted. I'll go to the chat also. Yes, an issue that AI, that ethics is cultural and varies, absolutely.
Yeah, this is a point I think we've talked about briefly before, Paul.
Yeah,
And I noted you didn't actually mention the word integrity in your presentation. And I feel that integrity is, in fact, much more universal in looking through the lens of at AI than using ethics. Ethics is so cultural and can vary. And the example you gave about the assuming an autonomous vehicle was going to hit the adult or the child, and the simple situation in the East, it would hit the child. In the West, it
that,
would hit the adult.
that's
How
correct.
does the AI system know this? So this is
Well,
about integrity and building integrity into systems.
well, that's right. The AI model with regards to integrity uh, talks about, what do the rules say? What are the consequences? I'm going to kill somebody, and then it gets down to the ethic of care. But then at the
Yes.
very bottom are the cultural values, the organizational values, and personal values, and somehow that overlap. There has to be some overlapping consensus there that's going to allow you to make a decision. Otherwise, you're trapped. Now, I don't get into defining cultural values other than things like respect and do no harm and the basic values of integrity. But an ethics program does two things. It controls wrongdoing on one hand, and it builds integrity on the other side. Otherwise, you just create a police state.
Well,
In
certainly integrity is manifested through the way our ethic we practice our ethics.
that's right. And
But
for
I
one,
think the integrity is a core issue that we can judge value about people who build these systems and use these systems, especially in the use of either nefariously, which is their lacking of integrity, or in the case of mission critical systems.
absolutely. I mean, the cross-cultural touchstone of integrity, relies in something like the UN Declaration of Rights and Freedoms. That's
True.
why the overall architecture is so important. That starts at the global level, the United Nations, and percolates all down. And yeah, I totally agree, Peter.
And we don't have anything like that in terms of the efforts to develop national and international regulation right now. So we still a long way to go.
Yeah, but there are some that do, and there's some have moved along this road. But you're absolutely right. There's UN Resolution 53-243, which is extremely useful. I mean, we can create a new regulation, or we can piggyback on something. And boy, you find little words in various resolutions that you can go to a country and say, "Hey, you've signed on to this," and this has to mean something. And what does it mean in terms of implementation? Uh, and yeah, and you're absolutely right. Once you get into the deep religious issues and spiritual issues and whatnot, the train can go off the tracks. But it's
By
something
the
that
way, I don't know whether it was in the introduction because I was delayed in getting to the beginning of this, but just not to dominate the conversation, but to put on the table, the Carney government has introduced an AI minister. It's for
Mhm.
AI and digital transformation. So that's economy wise as well as within the government. So
Yeah,
something for discussion, perhaps.
yeah. And the value of seniors and grandparents, another question there when AI can provide all the answers. Well, AI can provide a lot of transactional answers. The actual emotional answers that talk about vision quest, purpose and meaning of life. I mean, AI could give you a shopping list, I guess. But I think the council of elders and things like that and grandparents have a lot of value in the emotional side of bringing up children that the AI can't if it doesn't have an emotional context in it, which we talk about fairly seriously when you talk about the difference between a human and an AI, and where are the limits? you know, the airplane can't do things, but the human can, kind of thing.
Thanks for answering that, Paul, and
Yeah.
for taking this further from our previous session that we had. Yeah, it is something that I find I face quite often now, because yes, indeed, emotional, but we do have a life experience, and that life experience is not being, we can't quite share it the same way as we used to.
That's right, the values and ethics component.
Mm-hmm.
And the next question is about multiple AIs from different companies and countries. This is a huge issue. But there is some talk about having AIs that check on AIs. I mean, you could have an AI that's been brought up in a data set of international law and all that kind of thing, and when the user, you know, looks at something, say a military application, it can give advice. But you're absolutely right. All these AIs, if they are subject to different data sets or have had a different history of prompts and objectives, and the learning that goes on, the machine learning that goes on in that context, they're going to be very different. I mean, what is an AI in China going to look like as opposed to an AI in Russia or the United States as they evolve? And they're going to be different.
Yeah. So that was a question that I asked Paul Beckwith, and so that's one of the issues that, you know, when we talk about AI, we lump it all together, and that's just wrong. I think we need to come up with better terms, better ways to describe what we're creating for the first part. The second thing is, you know, we talk about it, we almost give it a human quality, like this AI, that AI, or whatever. But the problem is that it's not a fixed entity. Like it's rapidly expanding so quickly, and it's being used as soon as there's an expansion in one particular area, say AI for deep fake videos, or AI for composing music, or AI for actually editing videos. You know, as soon as there's another one comes along, people are using it, and you know, basically there's no protection for human knowledge anymore. There's no guarantee. There's never been a guarantee that you can get a job in your specialty if you learn to study something, but it's you know, it's a lot more uncertain now. You know, any job can almost be replaced, just about any job. Students use AIs to cheat extensively at high school, universities. So then they use an AI checker to basically tell them what percentage of their cheating is AI developed, which a marker can use, or its professor. So they introduce intentional spelling errors, mistakes, grammar errors to make it seem more human, to cheat the system. And then the professor starts using AI to grade all of these things. And like, people are saying, well, what's the point of an education? What's the point of going to university, or, you know, learning anything? Because you know, humans are lazy, right? We use the tools that we have available. So I think it's short term to midterm is going to be completely disruptive and, you know, threaten the very fabric of society. I mean, that's my big concern.
I agree that we're at a pivotal point here. And you're absolutely right. And even part of this question here, what happens when one AI wants to rule them all? Well, it's one person who's using AI who wants to use them all. There's this symbiotic relationship with this superintelligence. But yeah, the whole issue of jobs and how you're going to do it and what happens in universities. I mean, what may happen is that the ultimate arbiter of a university education is no longer the university. It will be the employer at the next step. These people can go through all these courses and get all of these kind of degrees, but then when it comes down to doing the actual work or engineering or something like that, that's where they separate them out. I know one employer, a big company there, it hired 22, I think, chemical engineers with the idea of keeping 2 at the end of 1 year, and to try to get around people that are very, very good at doing academics. But yeah, we're in for a new world, just like atomic energy.
Yeah, I just want to comment on this as well. There's, I guess I know I've been programming AI applications since the 1970s, only we didn't call it AI back then. We called them digital filters, Kalman filters, and various other things, but they're all the same in doing prediction and correction. And and
So
to
sorry,
me,
I think there's nothing the same about them. Like you say, you were doing AI before. You were doing nothing like
but
AI.
that's
This is
no,
I'm
but
sorry.
hold it. Let me finish. Let me finish here, Paul. That to me, there's multiple ways, millions of ways that one can go off and have machine learning happening, and then applying the logic that came from that machine learning to a particular situation. And that, but these are very specific, like flying an airplane. You don't have to have a whole bunch of the concepts of ethics and what have you. There are some very standard procedures that one can go through. And you just don't need one big general AI that covers all bases. And right now, that's the way AI is developing. It's developing on individual applications and going through the similar processes. And I like what Paul just said, that yes, but if you're working in the same field, you can share and learn from each other, and the thing starts to grow bigger, and you're building bridges, and pretty soon you're in a position where you're starting to approach this general position. Go ahead.
I think we've lost connection there.
No. Anyway, I was just saying that clearly there's a lot of work going on in AI right now for specific applications. Nobody is waiting for the whole general and everything we've just talked about to solve all these ethical issues. I mean, AI would never get started if we had to wait till all this was solved. But it
Yeah.
isn't. It's pushing ahead in many sectors without this.
Yeah, some applications will be general, some will be very, very specific, like a specific autonomous weapon system, for example. It'll have a very curated data set, but it will be up to the user to have some basic principles that hopefully are enshrined in law at some point, international law, that speak to the issue of safety, the outcome of ethics. And if they can get that sort of right in international humanitarian law into some of these systems, yes, the technology is going like an avalanche, but also what you've got to catch up with is the legal aspects of it all. Good people who want to do good things are going to have, take advantage of ways to embed ethics and testing and all that kind of thing in their applications. And not so good people are not. That is guaranteed.
Yeah, I keep going back to the concept of you're aboard a warship, and there is 1,000 drones coming at you. Do you say we're going to target each one of these with a human in the loop, or do you turn it over to the AI to handle the control system and give it the authority to pull the trigger?
Well, that's where the agentic factor comes in. I mean, in Israel, they had something called a program called Lavender, something like this. And the problem was that it was identifying targets. And it was identifying so many targets that it overloaded the human capacity there.
Yes.
So all the human was doing was saying, approved, 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 and just pressing the button, that kind of thing. So there is that risk and that danger, and the possible outcomes of collateral damage, of course, are huge. Absolutely huge.
Yep.
Yeah, the question on guardrails. Yeah, I agree. Guardrails, will be respected by good people. Yes, Peter? You're muted, Peter.
Guardrails, of course, are voluntary, and that's where this integrity thing comes in, because, like you said, good people. But what I wanted to try and do is just make a little weave between Paul's question and Art's question and comments between the two of them. One of the things that's really happening right now with respect to AI, instead of the big, large language models like Art was just talking about, is in fact making AI agents. So these are specialized models. So like one that would be use an example, I think maybe you used Paul or someone did, like for flying an aircraft. So very specialized, even the hunt and kill issue with a drone. So these AI agents are really, I think, going to be a huge multiplier in terms of opportunity for both good and bad. And we'll have to watch out how that can be regulated. At the same time, there's been a lot of talk, and the swarm was just indicated by Art. We're talking about a swarm coming at you. Well, you could have AI agents operating in swarms. So they could be operating in a drone swarm, or they could be operating, for example, in a business. And every function of the business, like we have as a structure in a business, there's human resources, there's accounts receivable, payable, etc. And you have AI agents doing all this. Well, Carnegie Mellon University, which is well known in the AI field for many, many decades, they did an experiment recently where they created a hospital. And the hospital had, or sorry, it wasn't a hospital, the Chinese did that. They created a business, a standard theoretical model of a business with all the traditional functions. And they had AI agents operating for each of these. The net result was total chaos. The agents could not collaborate with each other. So we're still a long way to go in trying to find this generalized ability for these machines to not only communicate with humans, but even with each other. So that's just an anecdotal story that happened recently that was made public.
But Peter, that's just curious. You say we are a long way away from it, but do we actually want that?
Well, I think at least I think it's generally we want to have health and safety, and we have to have some kind of boundaries on AI systems that can give us a higher level of competence about health and safety and other things, of course, besides that. But this is a social problem, a societal problem, and it's a global problem. And I mean, in the sense of what are the solutions? This problem is we don't know what the solutions are yet. We have theory about what they should be, but negotiating, that's a geopolitical issue.
Yeah. Health and safety may mean surrendering control to the AI.
Could be.
If you look at a warship now, missiles come so fast, hypersonically and everything else, a human in the loop cannot deal with it. So you simply turn the system on, and when it detects, it fires. That's how it operates. No human whatsoever.
So we're going to have a golden shield.
Oh God, I hope not. It won't work. Ted Milne.
That's what Star Wars was all about. Although the Israelis have their Iron Dome does seem to have some capabilities that were promised in Star Wars.
Well, the Iron Dome system uses a $90,000 round to shoot down a $200 decoy.
Yes,
You got to
I
realize too that the area of Israel is smaller than half of New Jersey to protect. So there was a little comment this afternoon on just how many times the total US GDP it would take to provide that golden dome with any realistic opportunity. Anyway, I made a comment that guardrails are definitely in discussion now internationally. I was at a conference at the UN in the fall, And there were a number of people from around the world, plus some from the Club of Rome, looking specifically at this issue of guardrails. The big issue was that all of the people there are being totally buried by information. The idea of large data systems never existed before. When we first started even trying to use very large and iterative data systems, which might support this kind of thing, we had sort of a couple of Commodore 64s linked together. And the ability to do things rapidly in very large numbers of variables and to do many different iterations was just not there. And over time, of course, this has evolved. But the big issue is we still have a tool that nobody knows how to run, even how to aim, much less which trigger to pull. The number of variables involved, the number of possible applications. It was kind of like trying to predict what the internet would do. And right now we're about at that point where we're trying to predict what large data sets, systems and rapid response and iterative analyses can possibly create. And the list they came up with at that particular conference was scary and very big. And everything from curing cancer in minutes through to essentially creating replicas of people. How do I prove I am real? I'm right here talking to you. Do you know I'm real, or am I a figment created by somebody else using AI? Yeah. So the range of even the definition of the term is very different. And they spent a lot of time focusing on the need between narrow applications, which can be controlled, and general applications, which they are boggled by, and certainly I am. The idea of even defining the limits and what a guardrail might look like, and who on earth is going to define it, and who, after that, who is going to impose it? Because quite frankly, unless imposed, it's largely worthless. So I have a question. Where the heck can we go on this, on creating some form of agreed guardrail that is actually going to help us at all in terms of directing where this new technology goes?
Yeah, and the part of the answer is, are you going to have to use AI as part of this guardrail system? Are you going to have massive AIs that vacuum the internet every once in a while to clean things out? But you're right. And just to go back to the Iron Dome system there, this is not going to defend against the number one nuclear weapons delivery system that's on the planet right now, and that's the sea container. You could put something in there and drive it into some harbor or something, New York Harbor, before it gets to the inspection point, and game over. It's just ridiculous.
Well, anybody can dream it up. Somebody else can find a way to screw it up.
Well, yeah, and that's what military people do. How do you go around the Iron Dome? Well, it's only about 1,000 ways.
Yeah, but it still comes down to this concept of bulk learning everything there is to learn. Well, I mean, Ted's right. It's just massive. You can't do that. It has to be specific. Or at least there's so much data. We have, quantum computers don't really exist yet. And even then, will they be big enough to be able to handle it all? Let alone the ethical question.
Will it all be data driven?
Yeah. Will it be data driven?
That's right.
Good point too.
Yeah.
To me, at least in the immediate term, we're living in a world of AI that are for specific jobs.
Yeah.
Not something general that's applicable everywhere. I'm sorry. I just can't see
it was so much easier, Art, when you and I, people like us, started. I mean, all I was working with was about a dozen different variables using GIS to integrate enough information so we could spot copper in the leaves of vegetation flying over New Brunswick. And it worked amazingly. You could figure out where to go and dig because there was residue of copper in the leaves of some maples in that part of the world. So you could play with multivariate, but the multivariate was in the dozens of variables at the time and spatial integration of them, not millions of potential variables, none of which we are really aware, A, are relevant, and second, how they relate to each other. So
Yeah.
my mind boggles, and I've been playing with this for a long time.
Yeah, and I've been doing the same thing, and that was
Yeah,
I was involved in orbit determination,
yeah,
and that was 7 variables that were trying to,
yeah,
with real-time data streaming in, and you're
yeah.
taking, you know, one step at a time in a blockchain sort of fashion and processing it and getting better and better. But it got to the point where
Yeah.
the algorithm was smarter than reality. It said you have no error, you know, so we had to artificially inject errors in to make sure that the algorithm wouldn't explode, because you get a singular matrix and you're doing 0 divided by 0. Well, that gets you nowhere. And so, but that was a specific application.
Yeah.
And talking here about coming out with something that's general and got ethics and everything, I just think that is so distant in the future that the people who are really in the business of developing AI systems, you know, are getting on with doing a specific one. They're not going to waste a bunch of time on ethics.
Well,
There
it's
were
out-
hundreds of people at a conference in South Korea at the end of last year on just that topic, on the whole idea of creating guardrails internationally or defining the way to that. I regret I heard that it went on, but I haven't heard any results of it. Have any of you heard anything of the results of the conference? Or is it just in the future? We'll have AI write it for us.
Yeah.
Make a quick comment on guardrails and the Golden Dome. The U.S. has a Golden Dome and guardrails in place to address extreme weather events, tornadoes, hurricanes, and they're in the process of completely dismantling that Golden Dome. And we're already seeing it with the large rise in fatalities from tornadoes. Wait till hurricane season comes along. They don't have decent forecasting on some of these storms. We're going to be talking about not hundreds, but thousands of casualties. So what will it take to wake up, you know, the government, you know, what they're dismantling the protection systems against extreme weather events throughout the US, and not just the US, but it impacts world data, like if NOAA, for example, stop collecting data on the ocean buoys, you know, we're going to have a huge lack of climate data to make projections on extreme weather events and things. So it's sort of another irony of the whole idea of golden dome. Why are you destroying your meteorological golden dome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just retain the data that supports protection of your hotel. To hell with anyone else.
Mar-a-Lago.
My Trump hotel. Yeah.
To Art's point about AI and ethics, maybe the ethics is not something that's needed in the near future, but perhaps in the distant future. I would counter there's an area where AI and ethics do combine right now, and that's in the development of autonomous and connected vehicle communications and cybersecurity. I mean, this is mobile robots on the streets. Clearly, we have to have some kind of social understanding with these machines. So I would say that's an immediate need. It's not widely distributed, but we see Whammo cars, for example, are already autonomous in places in California.
Yeah. I mean, the domain which we need help in now is the emerging domain of agentic AI. The assistive AI is highly developed, you know, the weather systems, all that kind of thing. It's predictive and it does things, in accordance with parameters, but not necessarily parameters that involve harm and ethical values or values in any sense. Yeah. Okay, are we good? How are we doing?
Yeah, well, this I'm just curious about intellectual property. How is that going to work out if anybody, if any human can actually claim that this is mine, my
Yeah.
intellectual, is there going to be such thing as intellectual property for humans, or is it going to be for AI only?
Well, if AI develops intellectual or original content, by definition, it becomes intellectual property to the AI or the AI user
Or
uh,
owner?
or owner. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
Oh, it's going to be the Wild West for intellectual.
so our grandchildren, what are they going to be able to create if a lot of it has been created or can be created by AI, and they're
Well,
fed by information from the AI? Would they be able to create anything? That's what I wonder. Yeah, sure, it can be further down, but I can see it already in some of the grandchildren. They are influenced very much in what's there already. I don't see new ideas.
well, you're absolutely right. I don't know if you've gone to YouTube and just said AI generated art. Some of it is unbelievable. Could not be generated by a human being.
Right,
Absolutely, yeah.
right.
And even when it gets abstract or impressionistic or something like this, there was one there, a picture of the Mona Lisa, and she picks up a cup of coffee all of a sudden.
Yes.
You just could not tell the difference.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're going to have to come to some new relationship. I find that AI art has a bit of a flatness to it. It's so well done that all of a sudden it doesn't have the imperfections of a human being that really
It's
make it art.
absolutely right. It's the imperfection that we're looking for, right? So
Well,
that that's
that's one way of detecting if it's a fake art. But in fact, that's getting better all the time. So those imperfections are going away.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. One of the realms where uh, we really need to get some ethics, of course, is in the healthcare system. Um, and right now, or going, you don't have to go back too many decades where there was more research papers and based on double-blind tests and what have you, evaluating a particular medicine to do whatever. And so there was the diagnosis and database and the treatment database, and the two overlapped, and there isn't a physician alive that can possibly read all the material that is being published every day. But yet there are, in fact, AI algorithms out there that are there to assist the physician in doing diagnosis and treatment. And quite frankly, I don't know what they do about guardrails and ethics, but clearly there has to be something. There's such a massive amount of information and coming out on being made available in the public domain at such a rate that even the AI then is behind the times. Its learning is outdated by the time it's gone and generated its own LLM.
Well, we need more than guardrails in, for example, healthcare, because guardrails are voluntary. You need something like regulation. And the regulation has got to be at least at two levels, the regulation of the product as well as the regulation of the people, as in certification of the people who build and use these things. And as I was saying earlier, mission critical apps. But any of the people who build these things, they are major products that go out in the wild, they've got to be certified because it's all kinds of accountability issues and legal issues that we still don't even know where the connections are. But if you don't start having this accountability now, it's going to be very hard to trace even legal threats. For
I
example,
find
one of the things Gabriella was talking about, art. The U.S. has regulated that AI generated art is not copyrightable.
I find this a very
I can't-
naive
I-
conversation.
You can use the same prompt and get different art each time with the same prompt. So how can you copyright it?
I find this a very naive conversation from two aspects. One is we have a very large number of organized crime and similar organizations, and we have a very large number of governments who will never abide by any set of rules that you put in place. There's
That's
one
right.
immediately to our south. And both of these groups, it doesn't matter what you do, Pandora's box has been opened, and we are about to see the consequences.
Yeah, you're making a good point, because
Well,
one of
just
one
remember,
of
the
the
one south
maxim.
of us has expressly said that foreign rules do not apply to them. It's the only one that's actually gone that far in some of its actual legislation.
Well,
Most of the
it's,
other ones just try to fake it.
but it's even worse than you might understand from that. In that, the essence of success in these so-called free markets is the more you break the rules, the more you destroy your opponents, the more money you get. And that's what they are trying to do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dave. I mean, one of the premises of ethics is that it's there to help good people do the right thing. You know, drug cartels and all these other bad people are going to do what they do. But the flip side of ethics is going to be controlling corruption versus building integrity. So you're going to have a separate mechanism, or there's going to have to be a complementary mechanism that's going to deal with that kind of thing. If you look at the definition of ethics and law, what law really is the codification of those ethics of significant impact to society. So there is a connection there. You know, you start to codify ethics and you get law, whereas ethics is that sort of voluntary thing that relies on values and who you are as a person. And it's going to be the Wild West. I totally agree.
You know, I'm sitting here listening to this and saying, well, who is right? Who's a good guy and who's a bad guy and whose ethics apply when we talk in terms of politics? We talk about liberals versus conservatives. Who's right here? And who's going to regulate that? You know, I just can't see it. It's you're talking about people's opinions and their backgrounds, and everybody's, you know, function and gone through life, followed a different pathway, has got different views on just about everything. At least everybody involved in this conversation certainly qualifies in that world. And to say we can find one set of common understandings amongst us, I really doubt it. We would debate anything.
Well, we have to start at the UN Declaration of Rights and Freedoms. I mean, that's where you have to start. You have to say, where is the overlapping consensus here? And not everybody is going to agree. But that is the premise. Otherwise, you just can't say, okay, Ted, you made up these ethics rules and they should apply to everybody. We start at the global, go to national, organizational, and you get into predatory capitalism, and oh gosh, you know, then
Paul, just
really
remember,
big
we
things
have
happen.
actually come to certain standards. For example, you should not kill babies. There is a general understanding of that. It is pretty well accepted. There's probably half a dozen things like that. Oh, now we got there. How? And essentially, it was a long-term argument, consensus, seeing worst case scenarios actually happen. And ultimately, we came to the common agreement that is a global standard. A lot of other ones we thought were apparently
But
are
it's
going
violated
away.
every day. Every day it's violated.
Yeah,
Killing
abortionists are
children,
around.
But
pro-life,
not
pro-choice,
by
all sorts of.
everyone.
No, you're right. The good people will adhere to it.
So let's put it this way, there's at least a theoretical possibility to have a common standard. But obviously there will be deviance from that. There always has been. That's why we have jails. That's why we have wars.
Yeah, and we have international humanitarian law that
right.
that
We're
does that.
we're quite far away from the Greek tragedies and the sacrifices.
Mhm.
We came a long way.
We're not even allowed to have the sacrifices we should have.
So
He
maybe
says-
there's some hope.
Yeah.
Yes, John. You're muted. John Beck, you're muted. There you go.
John, you unmuted again, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to pick up on this general sense that we're in a morass of complications and how do we get out of it? But I'd just like to try to define, well, at least describe one or two eras. I mean, we've gone through the Cold War, and then at the Cold War, I had the privilege of being at the UN a number of times, and there you could see the negotiations. But of course, it was all done on the surface, and what I'm talking here about easy stuff, the negotiations having to do with resolutions. Those are the days of the three big groups, the East, the West, and the neutral and non-aligned, as they call it. So that was easy. And then now we have evolved. I was about to say advanced, but it's not an advancement. Now you have even the morality a la Trump, for example. You have it's not a dissolution, but it's an evolving dissolution of these groups. You used to call them blocks, East, West, and neutral, non-aligned. Well, now you have these, okay, so you have China and Russia getting together. However, what's going on seems to be a higher and higher speed of evolution when it comes to high technology. So you have groups getting together, and a lot seems to depend, and this is coming up to the question I have for you, Paul, but it seems to be that if you have resources, massive resources, and you throw it into whatever problem you can define technically, there's a chance that you'll make some advance on it. So I guess my question is, it's a very naive, a very ignorant question, but then that's my state of knowledge. And that is there any danger, let's say, of various groups getting together in secret with massive resources to try to get a jump on the other groups? But all this would depend, it seems to me, on the degree of mastery, or at least perfection, depending on resources massively. And if that is true, and that's, I guess, my question, what is there? It just seems to me a massive potential for instability that in the background, trying to keep things very quiet, you have, you have fascist groups getting together and collecting as many resources as possible to get together with other groups to somehow get a jump on the technology and to get ahead. And here, I'm not even defining, because I cannot define what it is we're talking about. That is to say, you're at the border of AI and the best technology there is in terms of discovery and mastery. But it just seems to me there is a great instability out there, especially since the whole business of ethics has already been questioned. So there's I don't know whether my question has been precisely enough defined to even ask, but I throw it out there in case you'd like to comment on it.
Well, I think you're right at one level. I mean, yeah, somebody with massive resources, billionaire or something like that, can come up with something that could be extremely problematic. But that isn't to say that every action doesn't have an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, there could also be the FBI or CIA or whatever that are also have massive resources, or other people that could be in competition with this, could counter it or something like this. So you're going to have that kind of problem. I mean, it for somebody to all of a sudden get the silver bullet and take over the world, I think could be quite difficult. Yes, Jamin?
It's a reasonable reply, and anyway, we're in an exciting time. Let's put it that way.
That's for sure. Chinese curse.
Yes, right.
Yes, Jamin, you're muted.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much. Great to see you, Paul. Great to see everyone again. I have well, given the fears of, exponentially growing AI and malevolent AI and all that, there is an antidote that I propose. I'll put a couple definitions in the chat. I'll define superintelligence as AI crossed with the X, looks like an X, a multiplication symbol, but in the higher mathematical form of crossing, or in layman's terms, a mashup. So imagine a mashup between AI and CHI, CHI being collective human intelligence. And as I write in the chat, imagine a vast network of conversations like this one, but spanning the entire planet and spanning myriad sectors of society, coming together as a collective human intelligence and leveraging AI so that we can, for example, find those conversations where a Jamin or a Paul or an Art might, have the most impact and be paired with the best, collection of people. I love CACOR, for example, one of my favorites. But there are myriad groups and communities. And so right now it's kind of this disparate ocean. We're relatively fragmented from each other, but that's not to say that we cannot come together as a collective human intelligence and even use AI for that purpose. So if you look at the mashup of AI crossed with CHI, in a simple mathematical inequality, that mashup will always be greater than AI alone, right? It's kind of like, A plus B will always be greater than A as long as B is a positive number. And to quote the founder of, I think it's unanimous.ai, the greatest database that we have is all the human minds on the planet, what's in our craniums. And, AI will never be equal to that. And so let's take advantage of this inequality. Let's find a way to come together as a collective human intelligence, mash ourselves up with AI, and therefore always be ahead of pure AI. And anyway, just wanted to plant that seed and love to hear your thoughts, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah,
I like what you've said.
Yeah, I just want to respond as well. It says there's this concept and the use of the term AI as if we are talking about something that is finished and it exists. It's not finished. It's barely started. And it's got a lot of development to go, even in very specific applications let alone the general one where we're talking about ethics and all these extremely complex thoughts. And quite frankly, I can't see that happening in our lifetimes and maybe a few generations downstream as well.
It's taken us
it's a problem.
millennia since we invented fire to figure out how it can be applied. This is a collection of tools that are being developed by many people in different directions for their own purposes, and in some cases for shared purposes. But you're quite right. The definition of AI is still evolving. In fact, even the collective nouns that are applied to it are busy being evolved. So I mean, we'd be in the same boat if in 1955 we started to debate applications of computers, and we'd be probably with about the same amount of veracity and foresight as we tried to project at that time.
Yeah. And we are now, sorry, Fernanda, yes? You're muted, please.
Yes, to add to this conversation and to link in with the thoughts of guardrails and regulations, I want to share how in the past few weeks, I have marveled at the pictures from the Webb telescope and the far galaxies. And it has made us look, in our proper place. But what came out of that is that from all those other places, we have life. We have life on our Earth. And we're also coming to a consciousness that we are Earth. We are life in all its manifestations. So I'm on the side of life. So it is a criteria for, and then I hear the very knowledgeable contributions that you all make, and the tools are there to get us together, to always supersede AI just by itself, but to add to it the global consciousness of humanity. So that to me is a criteria in looking at the in looking at the development of AI. Does it support life? Does it support life? I'm on the side of life.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that. There was a term thrown around at one point called a Hugh machine. In other words, a human plus a machine is now another evolution that's going on. In that AI is between a computer and a human. Now we have a connection between a human and a machine, which is going to make us bigger. And it has gone through its infancy in terms of an airplane, for example. When we get an airplane or a car or whatever, now we have this connection and this synergy with this AI, this intelligence, which is going to make humans super intelligent in a sense. So you look at it from that perspective, and then all of a sudden it's a little different than looking at it from the perspective of they will take us over.
Right.
We will collectively become something different.
Right. I have just heard discussions coming from France that we would be hybrid with marine animals, and we would increase our sensory capacities if we were to become hybrid with other animals. So not just with technology, but in the future, we may become hybrid. We may survive that way. And there's so many of the senses that would inform us that we don't have access to right now. So I guess I'm on the side of life, and I'm on the side of listening and exploring and taking a lot of time to listen and to explore, because there's so many other worlds out there on our Earth.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you said, Fernand, but I want to point out that there are an awful lot of people who are going to use AI for exactly the opposite purpose. Their intent is death and to steal your stuff.
That's where the regulation, it's always been the case, Dave. There's always been the case.
The
And-
mafia doesn't care about laws
Yeah,
and regulations.
I know, and they've always thrived, but in the end, like if you look at the case in Italy, they were subjugated. So I'm just saying we're talking about what we can do on the side of life. On the side of life, we
Well,
can
They're still killing judges.
Huh?
They're still killing judges.
Yes, that's true.
Speaking of life, I just want to add a little point here, and you know, I think humanity is really playing with fire with these new technologies. And the other day, I had the privilege of having a little deer tick on my arm from my dog, and this deer tick is in the same form that it was 100 million years ago. And the last common ancestor was actually about 195 million years ago. So these deer were clinging to dinosaurs, and they haven't changed one little bit. They've adapted to our planet. You know, we're only scratching the surface of time compared to something like that. And, you know, we're not going to be destroying this type of life. You know, the question is, are we going to be around much longer? You know, and if we can't get our act together with our new toys, our AI and our nuclear weapons and our destruction of the planet from climate change, you know, we're pretty much, it looks like we're heading in the wrong direction at accelerating speed. So I guess the question is, you know, what are we going to do about it? We can talk about ethics all we want, but if you go on Facebook right now, you're swamped by ads generated by AIs. About half of the posts are from AIs. You can watch a video of Yellowstone erupting, wiping out millions of people on the earth, all AI generated. You can young teenage males can go on and have a voluptuous, gorgeous AI girlfriend and not even bother talking to members of the other sex. Think what that will do to human populations in the future if people stop procreating. So we're completely, yeah, it's a totally new world, I think.
I agree, but it's another point. And I mean, look what happens when we invented nuclear weapons. I mean, we have been, what, 2 minutes to midnight now for the last 10, 15 years. And somehow humanity just doesn't go over the brink. And is this another pivotal moment for humanity? And where we're going to just hover at the brink of something before it happens. And I don't know, there's some belief in the resiliency of humanity, and maybe we'll muddle through somehow, but it won't be pleasant.
But what we have now, though, that's different than nuclear weapons, is we have a technology that can manipulate the human mind, if for both good or bad, and it's available in the wild. Nuclear weapons were quickly and dramatically controlled, and still have been controlled to only a few states. So even if there's 10 actors with nuclear weapons today, that's small fry compared to what's possible with, you know, the internet and large language models and AI tools to be disruptive. There's just billions of people out there now.
But at some point we will panic.
People believe in MAD,
bricks
and
will come down on the AI people.
Yeah, people believe in MAD, therefore mutual assured destruction, and therefore they self-control. Is there an equivalent relative to AI?
Not yet, Ted. Not
Well,
at all.
I mean, AI is taking away our reality, right? You watch something, you don't know if it's real, generated by AI, deep fake. Sure, people say, "Oh, I can always tell it's AI," but just wait a year or two when the technology is that much more advanced. You know, when the number of nodes in the neural net are larger. You know, when there's more interconnections, more synapses between these warehouses full of you know, graphical processing unit chips made by NVIDIA, more and more chips, more and more connections. You know, you just won't be able to tell. So, you know, any art that you see, anything that you read, anything that any video that you see, your only reality is what you can see when you walk out the door. Anything online will be questioned as to whether it's reality or not. And this is a very scary situation, I think, to be in, given propaganda in our present world put out there by governments.
So you get to a culture where you don't believe anything on the internet, or
Right.
very, very little,
Right.
or have the capacity to hold it in suspension. Okay, I've heard this. I don't believe it, and I don't disbelieve it. Like the 4-pole logic system. It's neither true nor not true. It's both true and not true. and you learn to live with that. It's a
Or
Hindu
maybe,
system.
Paul, maybe we are going to, each one of us, choose a certain circle in which we're going to live, because that's what we feel comfortable in.
Well, provided we don't choose lies as a circle.
Well,
Well,
Fox News
that
is some
will.
people's entire universe.
Yes. Okay. Jamin?
Thank you. Loving the conversation. Just a quick follow-up, building on Art's point that, yeah, no, absolutely. AI, it's evolving and exponentiating. So we're now in an exponential time shift, right? Life will never be the same again. It's changing more quickly every single day. So here's an analogy. Think of Wile E. Coyote, the cartoon, you know, with a backpack full of hand grenades and missiles and whatnot, and just going exponential, right? I posit that our best hope is to pull a roadrunner where we do just like the formula that I put in the chat. We outdo AI with AI cross chi, and we out exponentiate Wile E. Coyote. And as we're passing Wile E. Coyote, we go beep beep. And now, how do we make that super intelligence benevolent? I think the key to benevolence is to make it maximally public, the collective human intelligence, right? Any group of people can get together and privately do something sinister or greedy, and I equate greed with sinister at this point. But if we're doing this as a vast network of conversations that's totally public, you know, if I say, hey, Paul, you know, let's go do some bad shit and, you know, pump out some more tar sands and I don't know what, you know, suddenly that's public. And so I get marked as wanting to do something evil, and I might either get excluded from the collective human intelligence or flagged or whatever. And so benevolence is key, planetary scale benevolence. So just wanted to throw those concepts out there. Thank you so much.
I like that.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
just
we
wanted
have-
to add. I just wanted to add an anecdotal story about perspective, since we're talking about, you know, as I guess Gabriella raised, sort of where is this all kind of a paraphrase, but where is this all going? I remember some years ago, anthropologists giving a seminar, and it was about a group of people in New Guinea, and they decided to make a cinema of this village life. And they had it processed, I guess, in Australia and got sent back to this research camp in somewhere central New Guinea. And they decided the anthropologists decided to show this to the locals. And it was done in the evening, so the screen was very clear. And they asked the people with some in hand language or some interpretation what they saw. And it turns out that all the villagers, the biggest thing they saw on the screen was a chicken. The chicken was running around. But they didn't see the people. They didn't see the buildings. They could only see the chicken because that was their eye was caught on that. They couldn't see the big picture at all. And that was a very interesting lesson, at least to me, about one's perspective on what you look at and then what you can take away from it. And I think we're in that same situation with AI. We haven't seen the big picture yet.
Yeah. And with that, I'd like to remind everyone we're now hitting our 90-minute mark here, and I'm sure we could go on at length. And I suggest that this might be an appropriate time, Ted, for you to thank Paul.
Yeah, I'll do that. This has been a lot of fun, actually. My brain hurts. But the fact is that that's one of the reasons why we like making this happen every week. It's always interesting. I doubt if any of you have left this not learning at least something, or at least being surprised. So on that basis, I would thank you all for coming. Thank you ever so much, Paul, for presenting this. I've always enjoyed hearing you talk about what is real. It never hurts. and therefore, I would ask all of you, please share this with your friends like we are able to do with all of it. It goes very well on YouTube. I would thank Paul on behalf of CACOR for helping make these happen. And again, some of you, and Paul is one, we will have back again to argue again because it's always such fun. So again, if you have not paid your membership, please pay it. If you do watch the YouTube, please subscribe. It helps us get brownie points from in some way, and maybe even continue to maintain this. So we can now turn on our video and audio, and I will